Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. You can find me personally. You can find Gorilla Brave, our food and beverage, nutrition, hospitality, farming, entrepreneur community, and all the links across all the social medias in the show notes, guys. I can't even say them all anymore as it's building. So with that being said, I have a very special guest with us, Russell Savage from Pico's BBQ. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
West Coaster here. Where are you located, Russell?
I'm in Menlo Park, California, about 25 miles south of San Francisco. 25 miles south of San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it out there. Spent a lot of time out there. Kaiser Permanente Hospital. Spent a lot of time in those doing food. A lot of entrepreneurs out there in California for sure. So let's talk about your story. Let's talk about all the way back for you as a kid, how you grew up, influenced by entrepreneurs, food, whatever it is, but it's your show. It's your story. I'm going to give you the mic for a while and then I'll ask questions eventually, but let's talk about from little Russell to now chef, food truck entrepreneur, building an empire in the ways that you are.
So I would say my earliest food memory, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I had a friend in, I don't know, it was probably kindergarten. And I'd go over to his house. And honestly, I wouldn't even really hang out with him. I'd go straight to the garden out back. And his mom would show me what they're growing. And I'd ask lots of questions about what they do with it. And I'd have to touch everything. I was very kinesthetic, still am. And I would say that was one of my earliest food memories. And something clicked there where it's like, oh my gosh, I love everything about food. I love eating it. I love preparing it. I love sharing it. I feel like I'm a servant at heart. So I love to prepare food for people. But that's kind of where it sparked maybe my initial interest. But I ended up going to culinary school in Denver at Johnson & Wales University. I worked in restaurants before that a little bit during high school. Throughout college, after college, I worked in different realms of the culinary world. I was a personal chef, taught some cooking classes, did a bunch of stuff. And then, a couple of years later after that, I got pretty burnt out of cooking. So I didn't really know what to do, but I still wanted to stay within the realm of food. And there was something about Texas barbecue that appealed to me. It was, like taking humble ingredients, kind of transforming them into something bigger than what they are by themselves. And I'd love to bake bread. I love to make like ramen broths and stuff, things that take a lot of time. And that's kind of what led me to Texas barbecue. So I had visited Texas once, very briefly, and then I packed up my car, moved to Texas, and started working at different barbecue restaurants there with literally no experience.
Okay,
So,
I'm like, my mind just kind of broke there for a second. That's a cliffhanger. Let's talk about barbecue in general. Okay,
yeah,
let's talk about, but I want to anchor it. Okay, let's anchor it against your classical culinary education. Okay,
hmm
because you go to school, you want to pursue this in whatever way. You go to Johnson & Wales, great school, great academics, great place to go build a foundation, get the skills you need to go to the next level. You can always get an MBA level or learn business skills later or find good mentors. Let's talk about, you learn the classical skills, you're learning them, you get educated in it. Let's talk about that first. What does Johnson & Wales provide for you, the skills, the stacking of skills, what I'll call the
yeah.
tool belt for you first?
hmm
Let's discuss that.
I would say the biggest thing they emphasized was mise en place. So making sure you're cooking really organized, you're clean, you've got all your ingredients at your hand. So when it comes time to preparing a dish, it's a pretty seamless experience. It's pretty strict though. We'd have early morning labs. We had to shave every day, polish our shoes every day, iron, all that stuff. And we would stand out in front of the classroom with like our hands up, making sure our nails were trimmed, and they would basically inspect our uniform. So it was pretty strict in that regard. And it was grounded in French cooking, but there were some international cuisine classes, but it really drove home making like a classic pan sauce, different mother sauces, very traditional French based cooking school. And I could definitely say that I've used and taken skills from that experience of culinary school and applied them to my Pico's barbecue business.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's dive into the barbecue. Why barbecue? Obviously, you head to Texas to learn it, but how does this? I want to walk through this process just a little bit more for entrepreneurs in the crowd because it's a leap, right? But why barbecue? Have you always loved barbecue? Like, I want to anchor it a little bit harder.
Yeah. So I knew nothing about barbecue before I moved to Texas. I had seen some Aaron Franklin YouTube videos like everyone else had, but that was really all I knew. I had never tasted real Texas barbecue before. I'd had some renditions of it here in the Bay Area, but never had the real thing. And it fascinated me, kind of going back to what I said before, like taking a humble ingredient and transforming it over like a long period of time into something special really appealed to me. And it kind of reminded me of baking bread in a sense, because like the weather can kind of play a role in bread baking. It can change things, and just like in barbecue, there's some variables that can make it a challenge, and that all seemed kind of up my alley. And that's really what prompted the move to Texas, and I'm so glad I did it because barbecue has kind of relit a fire in me in my culinary career.
Yeah, let's talk about burning out. Let's talk about burning out, maybe in the classical sense, maybe in the classical training, the obedience, the discipline. I'm not sure what, but let's talk about that burning out period. What is it that you learned during that period about you, about yourself, about you as a chef, a business person, maybe? I don't know what all the things that necessarily go on
So
during
I
that
would
time.
say I would say what was happening was, I'm working 5 or 6 days a week in a restaurant, and I'm loving it at first, of course. And then it starts to like slowly kind of turn into an addiction where you're there, all the time. And then even on your off days, oh, you might come to the bar, get a drink, might just hang out with some chefs or whatever at the restaurant. And it became like this monotonous cycle of me always being there. And what I learned is I got to take a step back from this before I really do some serious damage to my true love, which is, working with food and cooking. So being able to see, kind of change perspectives for a second and take yourself out of that situation, see it from like a bird's eye view, so to speak. Remove yourself from that. And luckily I did because it paid dividends. And I feel like if I stayed in there, that would have just been terrible. And I probably wouldn't be working in food today. Who knows what would happen?
That's incredible. The journey to Texas, let's talk about that. You decide to go. You decide you're gonna pursue barbecue. You found a love for it again. I think a lot of individuals find things like pizza and sandwiches and barbecue. There's these grounded things in us, these seeds that reignite us. We've got the training, we've got the skills to enhance these industries. I'm going to call barbecue an industry because it is. There's multiple different facets, sauces, cookbooks, whatever,
Hmm.
barbecues themselves. And so let's talk about the journey to Texas. Let's talk about immersing yourself in education, experience, and exposure into what you find a love in suddenly, or a growing love in, maybe.
Yeah. So like I said, I packed up my car, drove out to Texas. I don't think I could have told you the name of one barbecue restaurant outside of Franklin, to my knowledge. I really didn't know anything. I probably should have done prior research, but I didn't. I drove out there and was watching this Franklin masterclass and watching, of course, these YouTube videos. I came across a guy named Max who goes by Texicana Barbecue on his social media platforms. He's a barbecue consultant now. But anyway, I reached out to him. I'm like, I know I can't reach out to Aaron Franklin. So like, let me reach out to this guy. Let me see if he gets back to me, maybe with some guidance of where I could potentially work. How do I get my feet wet in this new profession? And he ended up responding back to me, I believe, a few days later, and is like, "Hey, ended up moving to Dallas." So he was like, "Hey, there's Terry Black's opening in Dallas pretty soon. I'll put in a good word for you." And I'm like, "Never heard of Terry Black." He's like, "It's going to be in downtown Dallas." So I looked it up. I'm like, "Oh, this looks pretty cool." They do like a ton of volume. They already had a location on Austin, and so I like filled out an application. I told him like I got a reference from this person, and ended up somehow getting a job getting a pit job is actually pretty difficult in Texas. They expect a lot from you. And like I said, I didn't have any experience. So they took a chance on me, and I'm glad they did because that's kind of what started this momentum of me really loving barbecue. And so I got the job. They sent me and a couple other guys down to Austin to train for a couple months. Learned a ton there. Really, really soaked it up. Worked every shift. We did overnight. We did the morning. We did the PM shift. Mostly brisket and beef ribs, but we dabbled in pork ribs, turkey, all that sort of stuff, sausage, and then was part of the opening team in Dallas. And so they basically gave us the tools and then sent us on our way to make, Mark and Mike proud, who are the owners of Terry Black's.
Wow. Like the educational part, the difference in the foundation built in Johnson and Wales, was it different? Was that able to use a foundation that is applicable to barbecue? Because I think a lot of individuals think it's like sort of the Wild West. It's like there's not a lot of, for lack of a better term, art from a
Mhm.
culinary standpoint. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So in culinary school, it's very, very structured. There had to be two egg yolks in this hollandaise sauce. There had to be a teaspoon of lemon juice. I'm just making this up. It's very, very structured, though. Very, very structured in that degree. Whereas barbecue is incredibly intuitive and it can't go by a recipe for the most part. I mean, sausage and stuff, you can do your percentages and whatnot, but like there's no recipe to cook a perfect brisket. You're dealing with so many different variables, the moisture in the wood, the size of the smoker, the amount of meat on the smoker, the size of the meat, all that sort of stuff. So I did not have a lot of tapped in culinary intuition, I guess, until barbecue really started for me. So it taught me to really think intuitively. And it's like, all right, you got to go with your gut. You got to go with your gut. And one, I would call him almost like a mentor. This gentleman named Joe Yim, who's worked in lots of different barbecue restaurants. He was helping out with the opening at Dallas too. And he was like, man, you just got to cook. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just cook. Because I was so used to going by, recipes and very rigid structures and stuff. But he said, basically, just go cook, don't overthink it. And at that time, I was overthinking everything. But looking back at it, I would say that was a big difference between like the barbecue world and the traditional culinary world. But I would say like the punctuality and the discipline and the attention to detail that I learned from Johnson and Wales can definitely be crossed over with barbecue, and I think it's benefited me.
Let's talk about building a business now. You get this education, you've learned barbecue, you're down there, you're learning recipes, you're learning stuff. How do you end up in California building a barbecue company? Like, let's tie those pieces together. But first of all, as we tie it together, let's talk about what's the most important thing you think Texas taught you other outside of the food?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I would say to be a good person and to be hospitable and to connect with people. And I would say you can't just sell the steak, you have to sell the sizzle. So bringing a backstory to the food is really important. And I feel like I got taught a lot of that in Texas. Just being a good person, making sure everyone's got what they need, slowing down to speed up sort of thing, and making sure, because there's oftentimes lines in barbecue places. So you want to make sure that people are taken care of and whatnot, even if you're not able to serve them for like an hour. It's like, let's make sure there's good music playing. Let's make sure there's good vibes going on in the line. Really treating everyone like they're your family is a very important aspect that I learned and that I definitely apply to Picos. That's number one for me.
I love it. Talk to me a little bit about the the leap now. Why the leap into California,
Hmm.
the deciding to take barbecue to California. As much as things do well in California, barbecue is not always one. I would say that I've seen stereotypically be the big place for barbecue. So there's a lot going on here, right? You're bringing something that's not something we think of barbecue. We think of the middle part of the United States, I think often, although
Hmm.
barbecue exists on both coasts for sure, and in Hawaii and in Mexico, so on and so forth. But let's talk about the style of barbecue you're choosing, why, as you decide to leap into California and build this business?
Yeah. I'll start with the why. Central Texas barbecue is kind of the style that's emulated all over Texas in regards to craft barbecue. But I mean, I just chose Texas. I could have chosen, the Carolinas or something, but there was something about like that brisket and the simplicity of using just salt and pepper, even though like everyone kind of uses something a little more than that, or at least most people. The simplicity really appealed to me. Texas barbecue is often imitated like everywhere. So it's like, all right, there's a reason why everyone's trying to make this Texas barbecue. It's got a really special place in my heart. And I love the Trinity, which is going to be your brisket, ribs, and sausage. And I'm like, man, that's such a cool thing to sell. Like, what if I could just build my menu around that? That'd be really cool. But yeah, just the simplicity and letting the meat and the smoke kind of shine and not, overbearing the palate with like tons and tons of different spice rubs and whatnot. That's definitely not what Texas barbecue is about, at least not in my opinion. It's about like kind of using the wood that's around you, using kind of like the animals that are around you for really taking it back. So I do use almond wood. it's easiest to find here. I can get it at the cheapest price. So like, why not? But going back, I don't remember the first part of that question. I apologize. You could repeat.
No, I mean the leap there. Why
Brisket.
the necessarily choosing that type of barbecue was the first part of the question. Why
Yeah.
that particular one? Why not Kansas style? Why not North
Mm.
Carolina style? Why not
Yeah.
Alabama slapping style? That that type of thing.
So my dad would go out to Texas a bunch, for consulting trips and whatnot. And he's like, I think you'd really like Texas. And that obviously played a role because, California is, I'm from California. I'm from the Bay Area, born and raised. And I'm like, oh, Texas is really affordable. That's just a perk on top of all of this. But it just appealed to me the most. I feel like I resonated more with Texas barbecue than any other style. And there was so much more information on Texas barbecue than any other style that I could really come across. I gravitated more towards it. And that's kind of what lended me to moving to Texas.
Gosh, this is amazing. Okay, when you decide to leave Texas with this in mind,
Mm.
do you initially target a food truck? Like, let's talk about targeting, let's talk about location, let's talk about menu, let's talk about what's going on in your mind.
Yeah. I had no goal of having a food truck. I'll be honest. In fact, I didn't really set any goals for Pico's barbecue. The most important thing when I drove back from Texas was I got to get this barbecue into as many mouths as possible so that they know what like, real Texas barbecue could be like. And obviously I'm improving week by week and it's getting better and better, but a lot of people here have not had, Central Texas style barbecue. And it was very, very, very important for me to cook ribs and brisket and eventually sausage and just bring it to restaurants that I really looked up to, bring it to chefs that I looked up to, bring it to mentors I looked up to so that they could try it. So I feel like that generosity of letting people try the product that I was soon to be selling really paid dividends.
Okay. Menu, like the sides, the other things you learn sort of in
Yeah.
Texas that has to go with things like brisket or ribs or pulled pork that are important central items to the Texas style of barbecue.
Yeah. As people know, like I have a very, very, very small menu, and this is for pertaining to the food truck. When I first moved back, I was really just doing catering gigs and serving barbecue out of the front yard. I couldn't really supply the demand for selling barbecue out of the front yard anymore. So then I ended up doing pop ups. And as far as the menus went for pop ups, it would always be brisket ribs, homemade sausage. I would always do a potato salad and then kind of like a rotating side. It sometimes was pasta salad, sometimes it was coleslaw, sometimes it was like a sweet corn salad. I kind of just mixed it up, kind of depending on what I felt like. As we go towards the food truck, the sides stay constant, the meats stay constant. I will probably be adding a couple more meats in the future, but for now, it's going to be just brisket, ribs, a couple different types of homemade sausage, the same potato salad that I rolled out at pop ups. I do beans now because that's just like a classic barbecue side. And I also do something that I call creamy cutes, which is a creamy cucumber salad, sour cream based, lots of fresh dill, red wine vinegar, red onions, some sugar. It kind of like plays the role of coleslaw on my menu. I'm not the biggest fan of coleslaw myself, was one of the reasons why I didn't want to keep it like long term on a menu. But also, I run a very, very lean crew on serving days, and good coleslaw should be kind of mixed up every hour or so. And we just don't have the hands to like make fresh batches of coleslaw kind of throughout shift. But the cucumber salad, kind of the longer it sits, the better it gets. So logistically, it made more sense to serve that. And it's not a side that you see in, I can't think of a barbecue place that does creamy cucumber salad, but I'm sure there might be one. But it's kind of like a New York deli side. And it lends itself well to the meats. It's like refreshing. It's a little bit acidic to kind of cut through the richness. It has that sweetness, which kind of brings you back to eating coleslaw, kind of encompasses all that. The beans have got my homemade sausage in it, as well as some chopped brisket. And the potato salad is kind of a Southern style potato salad with hard boiled eggs, which I might have to omit now because of the egg prices. We'll see.
And no kidding,
But
right?
pretty
Holy smokes.
basic Southern potato salad. There's going to be some relish in there. Pretty basic. All my sides are fairly straightforward. And I kind of like it that way. I want to keep the focus on the meats, and the sides do serve a purpose.
I love it. Building a food truck, equipping it with what you need, finding all the equipment, coming up with a name, logo, all of that stuff. Let's walk through that, because it's not stereotypically what you had done before.
By itself with just the food truck.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I don't remember if I got it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, one of those. But, I found it. I'm like, whoa, this truck is so dirt cheap, and everything in it looks like sparkling clean. I couldn't believe it. And I reach out to the woman who's selling it. I go meet her, and I see the truck, and I'm like, what? Like, what's the catch? How is it so damn cheap? It's like, oh, well, there's a new law in California, and this truck cannot be registered in California. And I'm like, well, like, okay, so I definitely can't buy this. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I looked it up. I looked into it, and it actually could be registered in California as long as you keep it under 1,000 miles annually, because there's like a new law in California where if it's 2010 or older diesel with like a gross operating weight of 14,000 pounds or more, it falls into that category where you basically can't drive it. It's just there, like 1,000 miles a year is nothing. So then I was thinking, all right, I'm going to get this because I can actually go through the loopholes and actually make this legal. But it's going to be tricky logistically because I can't really drive it. I'm going to have to just, park it and serve out of it and hopefully find a place that'll allow me to just keep it there. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But going back to like the inside of the food truck, everything was brand new. It had never been used before. The folks that originally bought it spent all this money on it. There's a couple fridges. One of them doesn't work. One of them's now my spice cabinet. It's got a warmer in there, which is perfect for barbecue. It's got a little 3-compartment sink. It's basically all entirely legal. So I really didn't have to do much to it. And I couldn't afford to do much to it anyway. So it actually worked out incredibly well. I got it for dirt cheap, and I just use it how it came. I didn't really add anything.
Nice.
Oh, and the logo. I'm really, really big into American traditional tattoos. And it was very important for me to create a logo. And, if someone saw it, they'd be like, that is so Russell. And I feel like I captured that with the logo. And my tattoo artist in Oklahoma City designed that for me. It was originally going to be a yellow rose because that's like the state flower of Texas. But we both agreed like, the rose is too big. The letters are too small. It kind of gets lost. So we went with the flowers. And yeah, I've just kept it the same since. And I've got no logos on the truck. It's pretty bare bones. It's this bright red truck, like Clifford the Red Dog or something. And it's got like a cardboard cutout of my logo in the passenger side window. And I think I'm just going to keep it like that.
Love it. Talk to me about engaging your audience, customers, letting people know where your food is, sourcing all the ingredients. I want to tie it back to the garden, how important it is fresh ingredients for you. Let's sort of take it full loop there.
Yeah, so I do a lot of, I'm relatively active on social media, mostly Instagram. I'm posting about, what I'm doing pretty frequently when I'm serving. I'm always serving Saturday, noon to none. So the people that don't have social media can find that out. And it's like, all right, I don't need to look up, I don't need to know what brewery he's going to be at. It's always going to be at the same place, same time every week. And as far as the ingredients, I mean, I have such a small menu and so few ingredients I actually work with that I do put an emphasis on the quality of them. Meat specifically, I source really, really high end brisket because it's kind of like my loss leader. Like people are coming for the brisket, maybe staying for the beans and the ribs and the sausage and stuff. But knowing that any place that claims they do Texas barbecue has to have brisket. And it better be good or else they're going to be really unhappy. Even if everything else might be good, if the brisket's not good, they're not going to be happy. So that was my number one priority. So I've got a couple different vendors that I get my brisket from. I've been kind of rotating different briskets, trying to find something that I'm really happy with from a consistency standpoint. But overall, the quality of the brisket that I use is incredibly important, and all that brisket trim goes into my sausage. So it's important to kind of utilize everything that you can. Margins aren't great on brisket, so you want to do what you can.
Absolutely. The navigating a new area, moving the truck within this 1,000-mile radius or whatever annually, that's not very many miles.
Not at all.
So talk to me about how you get around it. Do you park permanently? What does that look like? Help me with that a little bit.
So I spent 2 full days, about, I don't know, 16, 17 hours total, perusing the entire peninsula of the Bay Area, like as far as South San Jose, all the way up to San Francisco. I literally went everywhere to find a place that I could both keep my big food truck as well as the smokers. And that was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. I mean, I was so persistent. I went everywhere. I went to business parks. I knocked on on businesses' doors asking if I could just park and serve there like one day a week on the weekend. I went to like a Best Buy parking lot, for example, tried to figure out who the owner was. I couldn't, so that didn't work out. I even went to like city planners of different cities to see like who owned certain areas that I scoped out that I really wanted to be at. None of that worked out. And I was still determined. I was really, really determined. And after those 2 long days, I was like, oh my goodness, like, where am I going to keep this? So I shot a massive email out to, my friends, some family members, and then my family sent emails out. Like, we made an effort to try to find a place to be able to serve barbecue. And a gentleman that I did 3 or 4 catering events for, was like, hey, you can park it in the back of my warehouse and you can keep the smokers over there. Oh my goodness, the light came, and that's where it's at now. So I am on the east side of 101, which is the highway that, pretty big highway in California. I'm right by Bayland, so right by the Marsh. It's a very obscure location. And I'm able to plug into a Tesla charger. So I don't need what is it called? I don't need blanking on the name because I don't even use one. A generator, excuse me.
Well,
I don't
that's
need it. I
interesting.
don't need a noise. I don't need a noisy generator.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah, so I just plug in, and then it keeps my one working fridge, nice and cold. It keeps the warmer nice and warm. He allowed me to keep the smokers here, so I'm able to pull sausage off right before service, which works out well. And it's like I said, it's a very obscure location, and there's no visibility. I put no signs out. I kind of want to keep it a little like hidden for a couple different reasons. Number one, the smokers put off a lot of smoke. I don't want to be like super visible, and I also don't want them super visible on the street. Someone might do something to them. But also, there's only so much food I can make, and if I in a really, really high traffic area, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to serve everyone that I'd be able to serve. So kind of it's like a word of mouth thing. If you know, you know. I do post the address on social media so like people can come. But it is a pretty empty parking lot that I'm in. I've got 3 picnic tables. I've got the food truck. I've got a carport that kind of covers the smokers, and that's about it right now. And it's some music playing on service days. So it's kind of for the barbecue purists or the ones that just really love Texas barbecue. I wouldn't say you're going there, quite for the ambiance, but I do try to make it feel like Texas with the music, and then the line kind of creates its own vibe. People are talking in line, sharing stories. Maybe they've, eaten my food before, so they're recommending certain things to get. And that's my biggest goal, is to make this kind of empty parking lot behind a warehouse feel like a piece of Texas. That's more important than anything, because that's what basically made me fall in love with Texas barbecue, is the culture around it. So if I can put like 25% of that into my business, I feel like I'm really winning.
Awesome. Talk to me about mentors, teachers, people that have invested in you, what they taught you, how it's relevant now.
Great question. One off the top of my head is Joe Yim, who has worked at lots of really, really good barbecue restaurants. He was like one of the first guys to see like how much I struggled at the beginning with overthinking everything and trying to do everything by the book. And I'm hoping he can actually come out here and work with me for a week. It would be kind of like a full circle moment. But that guy really has helped me out. Who else? I mean, there's been so many people that have been influential in my barbecue career. Scott Moore at Tejas Chocolate. That is one of my favorite barbecue places in Texas that I also worked at briefly. He's present every single day in the business. He's a class act with how he runs the business, and that he's always there, and he's really hands on with stuff. I really respect that. And there's so many more that have played a huge role in my success. I definitely cannot say I'm self-taught when it comes to Texas barbecue. So yeah, I got some really, really good help, and I think it put me at a bigger advantage than if I just decided to open up a barbecue place without that prior experience.
Let's talk about the skills you think that along the way you've acquired all the way back to Johnson and Wales, maybe, or maybe even younger parents or whatever instilled in you, or teachers that have sort of stacked up to lead to where you are now. Cause you are having success. You have figured things out. I didn't even know you could plug in a food truck to a Tesla thing. I'm still wrapping my head around that one.
Oh, to a Tesla charger.
Tesla charger. Sorry, what I was. Sorry, I don't know what I meant. I probably said
Yeah,
something
you
else.
probably could with the technology these days.
Yeah.
But I tell people I'm low tech
Yeah. I love
in
this.
high tech Silicon Valley.
Let's talk about that, and let's talk about cooking barbecue on a truck versus a pit. Like, these are all sort of things you've had to figure out, but I want to talk about those stacking of skills throughout life that led to now.
Yeah.
Which ones are really important? Take as long as you want to answer that.
So when I was a youngster, really young, I got into a lot of trouble. I was always misbehaving. I was just getting into trouble left and right. And my parents decided to put me in contact football. I really liked contact sports. I've always really liked sports. It's actually like my number one passion, honestly. But I loved contact sports. They put me in football to kind of keep me out of trouble. It definitely worked. My grades actually got better too, even though I had less time doing my homework. I was able to like kind of prioritize stuff more. But sports taught me so much. I think, being punctual, being disciplined, working as a team, those type of things have really lended themselves to maybe culinary success over the years. But punctuality and self-discipline to me is huge. Showing up on time, even if, I'm, working for myself at this point, but, setting a time, showing up at that time or earlier, staying, true to your schedule, your work schedule and all that sort of stuff, not, slacking off. I would say sports really kind of made me a much more disciplined person. And then Johnson and Wales kind of drove that home in me. So did working in restaurants. I mean, I like to work in restaurants that, had pretty tough chefs that expected highly of you. I think that played some dividends into Pico's success with those prior experiences of playing sports and working for some real hard asses.
Yeah. The discipline, the obedience, the showing up every day, the motivation, the inspiration, all those things kind of connect together. What keeps you going? What keeps you pursuing this? What keeps you pursuing more greater things like that?
Mm. I have got some pretty bad imposter syndrome. So I'm honestly never really happy with most of the stuff that I make. So after every week of service in the food truck, I go back to the drawing board. I try to make things better and better and better, whether that be, all right, I'm cooking a little bit hotter at this part of the cook, or okay, I need to dial back the pepper in the house sausage, something along those lines. That's what keeps me motivated because the pit master term is thrown around, and hey, it's a great term, but like, does anyone actually master barbecue? There are too many variables going on to really get every piece of protein on that smoker perfect. And that's the motivation I need is like, all right, if I can be at least like somewhat happy with the product that I serve, then, maybe I've succeeded. But it's always on every aspect of my business, I always go back to the drawing board. And I think that's one of my favorite things of now being a business owner is that I have the opportunity to get better and better each week. And that's what keeps me really motivated.
Talk to me about ways of growing yourself, specifically education, podcasts, books. Obviously, you immerse yourself in the experience. That's what you did in Texas. But there's a
Mhm.
continuation of education, of growth that we're talking about here. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. YouTube has an abundance of knowledge now, of barbecue knowledge, and guys that are doing great videos. YouTube has been relatively helpful, but I have the access of getting to call people up in Texas, people that I joke around saying they've taught me everything that I know, but they haven't taught me everything that they know. So I'm able to call these folks up and ask them questions about like, why is the brisket doing that? Like, why is my sausage getting wrinkly? Like all that sort of stuff. So I have a decent amount of tools to pull from in that regard. And I listen to some barbecue podcasts. I listen to a lot of Aaron Franklin. The embarrassing thing is, I've never actually eaten at Franklin Barbecue, yet I idolize him so freaking much. The what he's been able to do, he's kind of pioneered a newer style of barbecue. And he's got some really fascinating interviews and some trimming videos. And I listen to a lot of what he has to say because I feel like if I could run my business half as well as, his, it would be one of the most successful barbecue places.
Amazing. I like it. Anything that I've not talked about that you want to bring up, stuff you were thinking about before you got on the show, maybe stuff that you want to talk about your business or the growth of your business or where you're hoping it goes?
I really like to take it week by week, day by day. What maybe people that are listening to this don't know is that I basically do everything by myself. Outside of serving day, I get help from some great people, Kevin and Chase. They usually help me on service day. But besides that, I'm doing social media, I'm washing dishes, I'm going shopping, I'm trimming briskets, I'm doing everything for a couple different reasons. It's very important to me in this early stage of Picos that I have control over everything. This is like a huge responsibility. I want to make sure people are getting the best version of what I have to offer. And obviously it's not a sustainable thing to do long term, but for right now, I like to be in control of a lot of the stuff that's going on. And I think I forgot the other thing I was going to say, so we'll just keep it at that. If it comes back to me, I'll bring it back up.
It's amazing. The growth of your business now, the balance of where you are in your life, the, I mean, we were talking about it's just a red truck.
Mhm.
I mean, is that the way you always want it to be? You want it to be simple, straightforward, held together by core values, work ethic. Like, let's look at that a little bit because you talked about the future a little bit. But the thing that underlying and what you said is these underlying core values and disciplines. Could we talk about that a little bit?
So going like real quick with the truck and going back to what I was saying earlier, like I would love to have also more help during the week, but I kind of really can't afford it at this point. I would love to have a logo on the side of the truck, but I just can't afford it. Like I got more important things to spend money on. But as far as discipline and all that stuff goes, my goal right now, running an amazing service every Saturday, but I'm really looking to push out and do 2 services a week, which would involve another bigger smoker and some more help at that point. So that's like a very short term, I would say 6 month goal to be open either Saturdays and Sundays or Fridays and Saturdays. There's a lot of tech workers around here that could probably benefit from a barbecue lunch service on Friday. And then, maybe 3 to 5 years, I'm not sure the time frame, but like a restaurant would be really cool. And I'm kind of building up potentially negotiating power with investors right now. So as you know, real estate in the Bay Area is outrageously expensive. And, opening a restaurant seems impossible at this point. But as they say, you just got to take a bite out of the elephant one at a time and just kind of take it day by day. I try not to get too far ahead of myself. Like, I'm much more concerned with like, all right, I got to make sure this sausage is perfect for tomorrow, as opposed to like, all right, what do I see myself doing in 6 months?
Yeah, that it does. It takes staying present in the moment as well as focused on the future. I think it takes a lot of discipline in that. Where can they find you online? Where can they find your business? Where can they reach out to you? Where's the truck generally located? Let's talk about all of those things.
So my truck is at 162 Constitution Drive. It's in the back of a warehouse. So you're going to have to drive through like a little alleyway and then it's over to the left. You can't miss the truck. It's bright red, like we've talked about. Instagram is going to be Pico's BBQ, PICOS BBQ. Email PICOSBBQ@gmail.com. And I'm pretty good usually at responding to messages on Instagram and emails and stuff. So if anyone has any questions, they can shoot them to me. And that's where they can find me. And also on Facebook, but who uses Facebook anymore? Just kidding.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, big time. I appreciate your story. I love the food. I love the stuff I see. I love what you're doing. I love your mission and your motivation. And I love the pursuit.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. This is going to be my last question, even though I think I may have already said that. I'm not sure. Fellowship, finding community as an entrepreneur, as a chef, as you found both in school and in Texas. Talk to me about the importance to you of surrounding yourself by good people, because you mentioned it earlier, being a good person always, a little bit as one of the lessons from Texas in particular. Let's talk about that fellowship, entrepreneurs, finding your group, finding the support you need, because it's something that's been a part of your story. So can we end on those, but take as long as you want. Again, I think it's a big part of who you are.
Like you said, like surrounding yourself with people who you aspire to be is really, really important to me. And I had the privilege of getting to work in Texas and surrounding myself with people that were so much better than me. So if I had a question, they had the answer immediately. Mm. Even here in the Bay Area, there is a barbecue community, obviously not the same magnitude as in Texas, but these guys have a ton of talent and we, bounce back ideas off one another and, we do collaborations and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's played a pivotal role in my success. And as well as community is so big with Texas barbecue, it brings communities together. You see people coming from all different walks of life, sitting at the same table, sharing barbecue, which is a pretty magical moment, especially in like divided times. So, people can put their political beliefs, all their beliefs kind of aside in the back burner, and they can kind of share this common appreciation for Texas barbecue, and food has a magical way of doing that. Barbecue has an even more imaginable way of doing that. So that's pretty special.
I like it. This is incredible. You have such a good mindset. Where did that come from? Sort of the positivity, the pollinator, the rolling with the punches, whatever you want to call it. I know I keep saying it's my last question, but I want to, yeah.
I'm an incredibly motivated person. And after working for people for a long time, I'm like, I got to put my name on this thing. Like, I want to be the one that's responsible for everything. I wanted to take that level of responsibility because I felt that I could. And I wanted that creative freedom that I really thrive in. I never opened a business before. I've never run a business before. So this is all brand new to me, but that it's also incredibly scary. Like opening day, like I almost had a panic attack. I was so nervous. and I am constantly on my toes. I'm thinking of ways to improve and ways to kind of streamline the operation. So, I mean, my level of motivation is just through the roof. I've never felt this way about anything. And people would always say, like, the power of manifestation is real. The power of manifestation is real. And I'm like, that's like a bunch of BS. I mean, it sounds good, but is it actually true? And I can confidently say I had a vision and I so far lived up to it. And it's very, very real. So very fortunate. I got all, there's luck involved too. Don't want to give myself too much credit.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. I love you guys. I appreciate it. Like, follow, share the episode, follow on social media. If you're in California, in the Bay Area, Menlo Park, go find it. Pico's BBQ.com. Also, same. Find it. Take a little adventure around the warehouse, but the momentum I'm seeing, the feedback, the food, I would say you're on to something here, and that logo will be there before you know it, and you'll be figuring out you're going to need to get yourself whatever the next move is, because you're going to need to grow. It's going to be demanded. So I appreciate that, and I think you've got all the skills stacked up, and you're gaining more as you need them from being a business owner. So.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate your time, and thanks for allowing me to kind of tell my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone listening in, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Continue to listen in, continue to go to Gorilla Brave, continue to follow, like, share, sign up for the email list. That's where we release all the episodes as they come out. You can be front and center on those releases. We are also available Spotify, Pandora, YouTube podcast, so on and so forth, whatever's out there, Apple, you name it. So everyone, we are out there. Just take a look. You can search. You will find us. All the links are there. There's also a link in my Instagram account, or you can follow us through Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. There's a link on there that'll get you to all the podcasts. So thank you, everyone, for listening in. I love you guys. We're out.